welcome to the Queen's English, and this is Inside the Queen's English. And today we are going to highlight the stories of children who were raised in same-sex parenting or queer parenting households. And today we have a special guest. Da-da-da-da-da-da!
Hi, I'm Johanna. Nice to virtually speak to you all.
Can you share with us your story being raised by same-sex parents and having two moms?
I will start at the beginning. I was adopted from Guatemala City, as a baby. So I don't have any memories. So I've always felt that my parents, my two moms, are my real moms, and a lot of adoptive children don't feel that way, even if they are adopted as babies. I just feel really, really lucky that I have such a strong connection to my parents. Very shortly after I was born, pretty much, my birth mother was homeless at the time and has had no formal education. And so she signed my birth certificate with her fingerprint because she couldn't write her name. And she told my foster mother at the time that all she wanted for me was to have a good education and go to university. And so those words have stayed with me my whole life, just because that's pretty much the only thing I know about her. I was an only child, adopted by two lesbian white moms. Grew up in a half Jewish household, basically raised going to temple on high holidays, things like that. And then my little sister came home from Guatemala, who is not blood related to me. Her name is Vicky, and it took 3.5 years to adopt her. And she was one of the last children out of the country before Guatemala shut down adoption. And so we were really lucky that we could get her home, and she came home only speaking Spanish. And I was the only one in the house that could remotely communicate with her. And she came home when she was 5. And so it was very different for her, and it's been different for her. We're really, really close. She's 17 now. We grew up in a pretty upper-class white neighborhood in Brookline, Massachusetts, which is right outside of Boston. And I went to private school, and then when my sister came home, I went to public school because it was the English language learning for Spanish-speaking children, and it changed my life. Private school was really hard. It was really, really white. Everyone was really, really wealthy. And public school just changed everything. And, basically there's this program called the Metco program that buses in black and brown kids from inner city Boston. And those became my best friends. And those became the people that I wanted to be around because they looked like me. And because I learned about my culture through them. My two best friends, Myra and Eileen, their parents are from El Salvador and Guatemala. And so I would go to their houses. And that's pretty much how I honestly learned a lot about my own culture. And yeah, my family was super supportive of any friends I had, and there'd always be these black and brown kids running around my gay parents' household in a very white neighborhood after school. So a lot of intersectionality there.
We just unpacked so much, and it makes me so excited. You have such a beautiful, unique story. It just brings so much light to the community, not only like a queer experience, because you're raised by two mothers, but just an American experience, right? Do you think that your experience was vastly different from the experiences of your friends or peers that were raised by a heterosexual parent?
So it's interesting. A lot of people ask me when I say I have two moms, they say, "Oh, well, do you miss the presence of a father in your life?" And I don't, but that's only because that's all that I know. And what I ask those people is to say, well, do you miss the presence of having two moms in your life if they're a heterosexual mom-dad couple? And they're like, well, no, and that's all I know. And it's literally the same thing. It's just flipping it. I've never had a dad. I've had godfathers in my life. Steve and Tom have been two men and my sister in my life that, come to all the shows and the dance recitals and the birthday parties. And they've kind of been, I guess, like a father figure in a way. Maybe it's different and I just don't know. But I mean, my moms are my parents and they love me and I love them. And I've never felt like there's anything missing. I would say the biggest difference between growing up in a heterosexual household and an LGBTQ plus household is that your family is always being called into question. Always, ever since I was young. I remember the first time I knew that I was different was in kindergarten, and when one of my moms would pick me up, the kids might say, "Oh, is your dad black?" That was like a very common thing because I was presentably not white. I remember I was like 5 and I was so confused by that question. I was like, no. And then I would say I have 2 moms. And I remember being younger and people really being so confused. And some people would try to even convince me that that wasn't a thing. And I'd be like, no, they live with me.
It's interesting because
Yeah.
that is the perfect example of heteronormativity, right?
Right.
Basically saying that your narrative is incorrect because it doesn't fit this identity or these boundaries that we know of, you know what I mean? Which is quite unfair, right? Because how can someone tell you that your narrative is incorrect?
I want to say that with all of the intersectionalities in my identity, the biggest one that I have had challenges with is race. And that's because my moms are white. I present as Latina. It was really, really hard for me to open up and talk to them about racial issues. And to be honest with you, it's still something that we're working on today. Yes, you've put me in all of these situations, but I experience life very differently than you do. There's no, specific Latino narrative, but people that look like me don't live and have the privileges socioeconomically that I do. And I have recognized that from a very young age. And so I am often the only brown girl in a lot of circumstances.
I'm happy that even though there are difficult conversations around race and around your identity and the intersectionality of who you are, I know that they love you enough to want to hear it and want to understand it, even if it hurts and even if it's hard to digest, right? So I just continue and encourage you all as a family unit to just continue to have these conversations. What words do you like to use to identify yourself?
Latinx is definitely one that I relate to, and that's an adjective, a gender neutral, inclusive alternative to Latino or Latina, identifying people of Latin American descent, an empowering term for all people of Latin American descent. Then WOC is a noun, an abbreviation for woman, woman of color, referring to a person who identifies as such. And then how it relates to me is I am Latina, which means definitely under the umbrella of woman of color. I also really, really like to use umbrella terms just because not to homogenize anything, but to bring people together and think about how we do have very similar struggles, even if it's not the same. So using woman of color to say Asian, Black, African American.
That's right. That's right.
Latinx.
Yeah.
And how can we kind of come together and have these conversations? And coming together makes us stronger and more powerful. Marriage equality is a noun, the concept of recognizing same-sex and queer marriage as equal to cisgender heterosexual marriage. The terms gay marriage or same-sex marriage can also be used. And this definitely relates to my parents. As you know, I have 2 moms, 2 lesbian moms. So yeah, definitely marriage equality, and I obviously believe in same-sex marriage and any form of marriage, LGBTQ plus having to do with obviously, because like you mentioned, I mean, I did grow up in the LGBT community. My parents take us to Family Week ever since I can remember, which is in Provincetown, Massachusetts. They have been going to P-Town since they knew what gay mecca P-Town was.
That is the gay mecca.
I have been going to P-Town since I was adopted. They started bringing me to Family Week the first year that I was adopted. So there's pictures of me as a baby that I don't even remember, with the rainbow flags and all the lesbians and whatever. In Provincetown, there's specific groups. So there's white moms with children of color, and there's gay Black dads with white children. Like there's so many subcategories. And the funny thing is when my parents first started to go, there was this thing called a Guatemalan picnic where it was all these LGBTQ plus families that had specifically adopted Guatemalan kids. Now obviously that group isn't growing anymore because Guatemalan adoption was shut down, but at a certain point that was a really easy place to adopt children from. And we still meet every single year in August during the same week for Family Week, and I have been doing that since I was a baby. My word is intersectionality. It's a noun, the complex way in which varied forms of discrimination overlap or intersect, the importance of focusing on the presence of all marginalized communities within the larger framework of society. That is definitely a word that describes me. I grew up in a Jewish household. I have two moms that are not the same race as me. I'm Latina, I'm adopted, I am partially indigenous Mayan. Really grew up in a really white neighborhood in Boston. I'm a person of color, woman of color who graduated a higher educational institution. So that puts me in an even smaller, different category. I'm bilingual. I speak Spanish and English.
I feel like a proud mom. I do. I know your moms are incredibly proud of you. And even at an early age, as young as you are, you seem to like really have understood or are diving into your purpose. And I thank you for sharing who you are and your identity. And I just want to affirm you and say congratulations for graduating. Congratulations for having a heart that's so compassionate. Congratulations for having an open mind and willing to teach and share with others, So thank you just for being a good human.